If you're like a lot of business leaders, business owners, and executives, then you may be worried or even losing sleep over what AI is going to do in your business, in your marketplace. Could it make your technology or your company obsolete? Could your hard earned expertise become a commodity? And that's a real fear, particularly for those of us who work in the professional services and knowledge work kind of space. This even has a name, by the way. It's called AI anxiety. It's a real fear. But today I have a guest who is going to put some of those fears and doubts to bed. He is a very outspoken and interesting character. His name is Alan Weiss. He is the author of Million Dollar Consulting and over 60 other books. He's going to give us a candid, no BS view on how to crisis-proof your company when AI comes knocking.
Welcome to The AI-Powered Business Leader. This is the show that helps business leaders excel in the rapidly evolving environment of AI integration and implementation. We go beyond the hype to provide practical solutions for real businesses. Whether you're facing challenges like developing a clear AI strategy, upskilling your workforce, or ensuring data privacy and compliance, we've got you covered. Here is your host, Alastair McDermott.
So, Alan, welcome to the AI-Powered Business Leader, and thank you for giving me your time again.
Happy to do that. Thanks for the invitation.
Last time we spoke was on my other podcast, The Recognized Authority. And one of the things that you said was that you like to poke people because people need to be poked. And you were talking about kind of entropy, and if people don't make changes that, the inevitability is that we go into decline, right?
Right. I mean, if you want to coast, you can only coast downhill. So you've got to grow. So the law of businesses, large and small, doesn't matter. Any business is that you have to grow to sustain yourself. And to grow, you have to innovate.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just get better at what you've already got. You've got to be even incrementally innovative. There are several different ways to do that. But actually, my metaphor is that allows you to coast uphill. And if you get good at that and you do it naturally, you're actually coasting but growing, which is nice.
I like that. Well, I think that AI, which is kind of the main thing that I want to talk to you today, I think that it's come along and it's poking everybody because it's this thing that we don't, it's all unknown unknowns to us at the moment. We don't really know where the edges are. We don't really know what the problems are, never mind the solutions. At least that's the way I see it. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're thinking about it at the moment?
Well, we don't know the edges of the universe. I mean, I don't care what scientists say. We don't know what's out there, yet we manage to live just fine every day. I think that AI will continue to grow and evolve. I think that it's overrated right now by far, by far. ChatGPT is great for contracts. It's great for, perhaps mass mailings, but it has no nuance. It's not your own voice. You don't stand out as unique with it. And it's often pompous, and it sometimes makes mistakes. I think we have to use these things correctly. An analogy is electric cars in this respect. When they invented the automobile around 1895, probably in Germany, Daimler-Benz or someone, they didn't then go out and shoot all the horses. And we still have horses today. We use them for sport. We use them for travel. We use them for a lot of things. And we're not just going to do away with internal combustion engines either. Life is not an on-off switch. It's a rheostat. And so with AI, we will learn to use it to our advantage. And I think people who scream it's going to take over the world, belong in the Chicken Little encampment where they look up and wait for the sky to fall.
What are the business leaders who you are talking to saying about AI? What are they saying to you about it?
A lot of different things. Some of them say this has been great, but they're not quite sure what great means for them. Some of them are using it quite well. Lawyers can use it wonderfully for briefs and things that, don't need nuance really. They're not writing War and Peace. They're writing, a court document or even a contract for a customer or a client. And for that matter, it's very good for instructions, and so you get a new TV and here are your instructions, but now chat can simplify them. A lot of people have no idea how to use it and they're on the sidelines waiting to see. And some people are just jittery anyway. I mean, I call this the post-pandemic blues. And, I'm thinking about the fact that self-esteem, which is normally kind of low because people don't feel in control of their lives, it's probably worse now than it's ever been. AI is adding to that feeling of despondency.
Mm. Yeah, there's like an anxiety. I think people literally refer to it as AI anxiety because we don't really know how it's going to impact on us, and there's a lot of employees worried about their jobs.
Well, the fact is we don't know a lot of things, but I don't walk around all day afraid, and employees who are worried about their jobs aren't providing enough value for their employer. It's as simple as that. Now, your audience, I would assume a lot of people have their own practice, own their own business, in which case you've got to be bold and you've got to see, what it is that you want to use. And I would suggest to you and to your viewers, if you listen to nothing else today, in 1982, in Megatrends, Nesbitt said high tech, high touch. That was the first of these really predictive management books. And Nesbitt was damn right. And today, with AI exemplifying high tech, we need higher touch than ever. So keep that in mind with your business. It's not going to be an AI world. It's going to be a world where businesses thrive and grow because of the value they provide for customers and clients. And that value is going to include high touch.
Are you using it personally yourself day to day?
Depends how you define AI. Uh, I have a sophisticated computer here, and I have a desktop, a laptop, and I have a tablet, and I have a phone, and so forth, like most people. Uh, and I use 20% of it to 100% of its effectiveness. The other 80% I don't need. I don't go around editing films and things like this. And so, to the degree that AI is involved in that, automatically making phone calls, automatically determining who's contacting you, and things like this, yeah, I use it. But I'm a writer. I've written over 60 books. I've written thousands of articles, and I include in writing podcasting and videos. All that is publishing to me. And every word you hear or see or read from me is mine. I would never use artificial intelligence for that because I have managed to be this successful in life because I'm a unique individual. And consequently, we can't just be out there grinding away with saying, I use AI better than they do. That's neither here nor there. What you have to be talking about is I provide better results for you than anyone else. And that's high touch.
So if we bring it back to that and it's about the results, surely it doesn't matter the tools that we use to get those results, whether it's AI or human.
Methodology never matters. What matters are results. Nobody needs a drill, they need a hole, right? And so if no one needed holes, no one would have drills. If nobody needed insurance, there wouldn't be insurance companies. And so I would suggest to you that the focus always has to be on the result that you're going to create. Now, can you use AI to help enhance that? Of course you can, in many instances. But I'll give you an example of something. I think, tell me if I'm right. Some of your viewers, your listeners are in accounting. Would that be a fair
Yeah,
statement? Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So accountants are like lawyers. They tend to bill by the hour. They're not quite as crazy as lawyers who bill by 6-minute increments, but they're close to that. And I had an accounting client, one of many I've had. This was a 35 partner firm, and one of the 4 managing partners was my specific client. And I helped him move from a business that was based on hourly billing and growth in that manner, which means you need more people and more hours billed in the whole business, to providing a menu of results for clients for which they can make a value-based fee comfortable and apparent and attractive because of the return on investment. I mean, if an accountant can't calculate a return on investment, who can? So no matter what kind of business you're in, the high touch aspect is important and it separates you from the pack. We had to get insurance for something, and the details aren't important except that I needed a good insurance agent. We hadn't used one for a long time. My lawyer recommended an insurance agent, and this was a fairly small thing we wanted to do. But this guy stuck with this for 2 months through the underwriters and all this nonsense that insurance companies put up to delay you, and he got it through. Now I'm asking him to do something a lot more powerful for us, a lot more meaningful for us, because I was impressed by what he did. So for all the AI ingredients of this, the insurance policies, the application forms, the online work you can do, it was his perseverance and his advice that made the difference.
So that's the high touch, and that's the what the human can provide.
That's right.
What
That's right.
about in areas where, so okay, actually let's go back. You talk about value-based pricing, and another friend of mine, business coach I've worked with, Jonathan Stark. I've had him on my other podcast as well a couple of times. He's a big fan of value pricing, and he has a show called Ditching Hourly. That's his premise, is to get away from hourly billing. And when I talked to him about AI, we were talking about, the value of results. And his view when it comes to writing is it doesn't matter if I write the book or if AI writes the book. If the book is valuable to the end user, to the reader, then it shouldn't matter how much I wrote and how much the AI wrote. How do you feel about that?
Well, I couldn't disagree with him more. And I also advise people to be careful about his connection with value-based fees. I wrote the first value-based fees book from McGraw-Hill or Wiley, one or the other, in the mid 90s, and now it's in its third edition. So I pioneered value-based fees for professional services firms. He might be an advocate of it, that's fine. But what you just said, if that's an accurate quote of his feelings, that's like saying that this is good enough for you, and if it's good enough, I'm happy. My feeling is that if you want to separate yourself from the crowd, when I was fired in 85, there were 250,000 independent consultants in America. And I said to myself, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to try to pay better hourly rates than they have? Am I going to try to say, well, I'm really better at teaching courses than they are? That's nonsense. And so I focused on results. And what I'm telling you, and everybody listening to this, is the following. You have Chat GPT or AI in any word, produce the book you just alluded to in your example. It has two major failings. One is that it doesn't represent your unique value because it's coming out from something that really you didn't generate, and it won't be as good as something you can generate unless you're no good. The second thing I'd point out is that it joins the vanilla crowd. And what AI does, it creates vanilla. It doesn't create strawberry or blackberry or tutti frutti. It creates vanilla. And that's why I say it's good for contracts and it's good for instructions. But if you write a book, you want to provide improvement and value to your reader. And that's got to come from who you are and what you've learned. So I think it's lazy to put it through chat. And I also think it's dishonest for the reader.
Well, it's certainly lazy, and maybe if we swapped in the word for efficient instead of lazy, you can think about that differently. But for me, the issue is it's it's degrees of it's like it's a graduated thing. We could say, okay, write me a book on this topic and give it no further input. But if we give it, say, three books that we've already written on a subject, a bunch of blog posts, some of our podcast interviews, and then we start giving it very detailed instructions on what to write, surely like that has us in there. It's not vanilla. Surely that's another flavor.
You're on thin ice. And I'll tell you why. First of all, efficiency is not the word to insert, effectiveness is. All right. You can be as efficient as hell, but that hole in the wall has to be effective. Okay. So I would tell you that these gradations you're pointing out are not helpful. And I would tell you that it's disrespectful for your reader. But most importantly, I have the strongest solo consulting brand in the world. A lot of my books are in second, third, fourth editions. Million Dollar Consulting's in its sixth edition. Every new edition I write for the publisher is a new book. I don't go back to the old one and change sentences or examples or modify things. Every one is a new book I write from my head to the screen to show people I'm on top of my game. You can be on top of your game, and here's the social proof. So I disagree somewhat with the characterization that AI is simply another tool. I think it has, as I tried to describe, I think it has uses, but I don't think it substitutes for our mental acuity. And when it does, what do you have? Alastair, you have people who can't do math in their heads. You have people who don't know how to write cursively. You have people who don't understand grammar at all. It's the dumbing down of society.
So, well, then the question is, were you on the front lines protesting when they introduced calculators to high schools? Like, would you be conceptually against that?
I'm not conceptually against calculators, but I am conceptually against failing to teach the times table to kids in grammar school. Because what are you going to do? You're somewhere you got to whip out a phone, whip out a calculator because you can't figure out 2 times 7 times 8, because you can't do the square footage of a rug that you need because you don't know how to do that calculation, which is area, width times length. And so what happens is that you have this gradual erosion of things and people start to make errors about it, right? They don't understand what their tip is. They don't understand how to tip. And I think that the more you can do in your head smoothly, the better off you are. So I'm not against aids, okay? I'm not against help.
Mhm.
But I do think that when you use help to substitute for the native skills that we could develop, you're demeaning the individual. And we become more and more reliant on things. I mean, imagine if all the cell phones went out tomorrow. All right. For any reason, all the cell phones went out. All right. That's a landline phone. Like I said, they didn't go out and shoot all the horses.
Okay, so let's look at this personal world, this high touch world. How do people who how do business leaders make it more personal? How do they go more high touch? Because I think that's what you're talking about, right? If everybody else is going low touch AI driven, then the answer is to go more high touch, right?
Right. That's a good question. I'll give you a social proof here. One of the most bureaucratic, monolithic organizations I know is AT&T. All right. And I was on an Alaskan cruise with my wife, and we had to do something so that we would get, our phones would work offshore and the whole business. But they did that. But when I got back, I found that they had screwed it up to the point that I couldn't get email back in my native land here, right? And so I actually put aside an hour. I put on some classical music, and I went online to AT&T, and I figured, this is going to be a disaster. They have a chat function on their site. So I hit chat, and I figured I have to go through some robotic thing. And what do I get? I get a live agent. And she says, I know exactly what happened. I can help you. Would you be willing to wait 2 minutes? I said, yeah. And she did. Now, I don't care what AT&T pulls in the future. That meant a lot to me, that they have that capacity. Back here over my shoulder, I'm pointing at a credit card terminal. Most of my work is paid by credit card. And I have a virtual terminal on the screen, but I have that manual terminal as well. It's easier for me. So one day it flares up, it's not working right. And so I write a letter to my banker. And within 10 minutes, my banker has a technical person on who gets a second technical person on. And 15 minutes later, it's working. It was set up for router and it should have been set up for phone or vice versa. Who knows? But the fact is, all that happened within 30 minutes. So that's high tech, and the bank operates in a very high tech way. I can pay my bills online and so forth. But when I need a person, that person is there. That's what leaders have to do, and that's what they have to exemplify. Can I give you one more example?
Please do.
Okay, it's a first world problem, but I'm going to tell you. We have 2 Bentleys. So I got a substantial payment each month just on those 2, never mind the rest of the things I have. And so I pay it online, high tech. But then something went wrong with the system, and they also deducted it online. So I paid 2 bills twice, right? And so I get on the phone. They say, yeah, I'm going to reverse it. But I'm getting bad notices. So I write a letter, a FedEx letter, to the CEO of Bentley, who I can find online, high tech. 2 days later, he writes me back and says, I'm terribly sorry. This is our fault. And either I or our chief financial officer will be back to you in a day. And a day later, it was resolved. Now, when he's willing to do that for a customer, that tells the whole organization that that's what you have to be doing.
Now, on the other hand, we've seen examples recently of companies. I think Klarna is an example where they do online payments. So this kind of area, and they have replaced the work of 700 staff with an AI customer service bot.
Were you asking me about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, is that not, is that not completely counter to this? Like, they're saying, well, we're saving our customers by, we now don't have to carry 700 staff, customer support reps.
Okay, I understand that. If that's true, I understand that. But if you or I or any of your listeners right now go into a pharmacy or a retail store, a lot of places, Home Depot, one of the big box stores, what they'll find is automated cashiers. And then what they'll find is that employees have to come over and help them through it. The automated cashiers aren't saving a thing. That high tech does not work. All right. And so I do think, and we've seen evidence of this with UPS and with FedEx, where AI is replacing people is white collar. They're replacing people who have to schedule and track and so forth, because AI can do it much better than humans can. I still don't know how on earth they come up with the National Football League schedule every year. I mean, it seems so incredibly complex, let alone who officiates and so forth, or when they're going to play in Brazil and Spain these days. So I think AI has a real fabulous role in things like that. But when you have to start interacting with people on a daily basis, these automated cashiers are hysterical. Please put your item on the waiststand. You failed to put your item on the waiststand. Please use your credit card. I'm sorry, that credit card is unacceptable.
So if you were going to give one piece of advice to people on like trying to figure this out for their own business, like there's a lot of non-technical business leaders who are looking at this thinking, okay, like first of all, I don't know how to deal with this. Secondly, it's a moving target because it's changing all the time. There's new tools, there's, new advancements. How do I deal with this?
I'm going to answer your question in a second. I want to ask you a question first. Is that okay?
Hmm.
Why did you invite me on?
Because you're a thought leader. You're somebody who I've spoken to before. You're opinionated, and I think that like you're a smart person and you're very articulate. So put all of those together. I'm interested to know what you say about this.
And there's the advice to your listeners. What you have to become, not you personally, Alistair, all of us have to become, is an object of interest. And so my suggestion to you is that you remember the way you create uniqueness, the way you create value, and the way you build a brand. And I'm not going to give my definition of a brand. A brand is how people think about you when you're not around. It's a timing business. The way to do that is the first sale is to yourself. I'm good. I have value. I know how to manifest it. The second sale is selling you to a customer or client. It's not done through a product or a service or methodology or techniques or tools. It's the fact that you trust me and I trust you, and we can create a better future.
I like it. Is there anything else that that you think people should be thinking about with all of this? I mean, should should we just do our thing and don't worry about AI? Should we be deeply learning about AI and trying to become as literate as possible? How are you thinking about that?
Well, not worrying about AI is like not worrying about the electrical grid. I mean, it's there, but I have generators outside in case our power goes down. I think that what people should be doing is asking themselves this question: where and how can AI enhance my quality, my value to prospects and clients? And where and how does my personal intervention or my people's personal intervention do that best? And what's the balance there? I think they need to ask that. I also would tell you that people need to take control of their lives. People think today that they have less control than ever, and it's not true, but the pandemic exacerbated this. So we got conflicting news from the medical people, conflicting news from the politicians. We have people who are for this and against that, and that's why we have polarization right now, in fact, in Congress. What we have to focus on is, what is it that I can control well, where I don't need permission to act? And that's a much larger stage than we think it is. And once you take control of that, then you become a thought leader. Then you're calling the shots. And then people want to come to you. So the secret of the professional services business is not feet on the street. It's creating a repute and a value where people are knocking on your door.
I love it. That's probably a great place to end. Alan, thank you very much for coming on the AI Powered Business Leader.
May I add, Alistair, that there are free resources on my site if people want them. So alanweiss.com, ALANWEISS.com. Free video, free text, free audio. I'm not selling anything here. You're welcome to them. And thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed your questions.
Yeah, and I've read at least 10 of your books, which is shockingly only a small percentage of them. But yeah, no, I highly recommend all of your books, your podcasts, and your emails. That's why I wanted to bring you on the show.
I appreciate that. And, I go for volume, not accuracy. So that's why there's so much out there.
Well, I think we're going to see more of that with AI, right? Thanks, Alan. I always love speaking with Alan Weiss. He is a very interesting person to talk to. Never shies from sharing his opinion. And in this case, I think it's important. I think that we need to be having conversations. I don't agree with everything that Alan had to say there, but I think that it's important, particularly right now, to understand what the kind of the breadth of perspectives are. But don't get me wrong, I agree with most of what he said, just not all of it. There's a couple of things that I just want to highlight. I made some notes for myself here. So I think that like the most important thing right now with the current state of AI is that we can use AI as a tool to augment, but not to substitute for human expertise. And I think that's the most important thing, like for me right now, where the tools are at. And I know they're increasing and improving exponentially at this crazy rate. And I think that's where, that's where I think like this is a moving target we're talking about here. It's not something that's standing still. So the current state of AI is the worst it will ever be. So just remember that. But I think it is important that we use it as a tool. He talks about how reliance on AI could lead to the dumbing down of skills. And this is one I'm not so sure I agree with, because I see the point, but I also see that, calculators, when they were brought in, there was a lot of people, because I looked this up, it was a little bit before my time, but there was a lot of people protesting against the concept of bringing calculators into high schools. And now they're kind of standard. We still need to learn the times tables, as Alan said, but I want people using these tools. Like, I want my accountant to use a calculator. I want my accountant to use a spreadsheet and eventually to use AI. I don't want them using an abacus and sheets of paper. So I think that, we want people to use these tools in certain contexts. I think there's some nuance there. Where I think he is absolutely spot on is talking about high tech, high touch. And he talks about personalized, one-to-one. I think that's the really crucial thing here. And if you go back and listen to my conversation with Mark Schaefer, we were talking about the same thing, about this really strong personal brand and having high touch, at least in the world of professional services that we're in, which, by the way, is also on the very front lines, because knowledge is data, and data is something that AIs are getting very good at processing. So I think that, if you're in professional services, if you take in data, process it, and then spit out the result, well, not spit it out, but you know what I mean. If that's what you do, and you apply your expertise in the middle, I think you are in danger of being commoditized by these kind of tools. And so that's where this really becomes very important, this kind of brand building, personal brand, and also high touch relationships, and the importance of relationships. I can't agree with him about AI being overrated. It certainly does lack nuance, and it lacks that personal voice, that's for sure. But it's improving, and if you play with it, and I've seen this before from people who are a bit skeptical about AI, that they haven't spent a lot of time, or they just don't have the patience to learn how to use it, or to keep going back over and over again to try and get the output. Because if you do, you learn how to use these tools in a certain way, they can get pretty close to your voice. So like I haven't written 65 books or whatever like Alan has, but I have written a few, and I took the words of all of my books, and in fact I took all of my all my blog posts as well. So I put almost 200,000 words that I've personally written, handwritten, into AI, and I asked it then to replicate what I would say and how I would say it, and it's getting better, and I test that every so often. I find that does improve over time. But I also understand, and I think it's important to speak with a broad kind of section of different people to see where their minds are at and where their thinking is at when it comes to AI. I don't, like I said, I don't agree with all of that, but I agree with a huge amount of it. So yeah, I'm going to have some more amazing guests to come on. So please stay tuned. Thank you for your attention and for listening or watching. And please check out aipowered.biz if you want to chat with me. I'd love to chat to anybody who wants to talk about this. And if you have any guest recommendations, I'd love to hear them too. So,
thanks for listening to the
time.
AI-Powered Business Leader. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with a colleague or friend who might benefit from learning more about AI. Your recommendation goes a long way in helping us spread AI literacy and empower more business leaders. And if you have a moment, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We truly appreciate it.